Have you ever wondered how to build a table? Well, to find out more, watch this video. Hey guys, it's MJ Sanga, your creative engineer, and welcome to today's video. Today, we're gonna build a table. Yes, a table. Now, over the few months, I've been working on a project to build my own mini working station. This station will allow me to do my CAD work, my reading, and also getting down on my personal projects such as my robot arm, second video coming. So I decided to make a table. It wasn't an easy choice at first, but then after looking through the internet and many shops, seeing how much tables cost these days, I decided to make one my own. My main goal was to build a table that's cheap, cost effectiveness, and does what a simple table can do. Therefore, in this video, I'm going to show you how I built this simple table using the wood workshop and the mechanical engineering workshop where I work part-time. By the way, a special thanks to Mr. Kamanga, who guided me on building my table, mostly the top board, which was the woodwork part, because I'm not really skilled in woodwork, but his guidance was very helpful as I was building my table. So thank you very much. Now, as always, we'll need to first design our table and know the dimensions that we're gonna be able to work with. We can't just start out of nowhere. So then, when working on the frame, I decided to take the measurements of most tables and see which measurement would work best with me. For the height of my frame, I made it 73 millimeters. The width is 50 and the length is 100 millimeters. Initially, it was supposed to be 125 millimeters by 60 millimeters, but I did not take into account the material that had to be removed to make sure the edges are straight. Now then, after designing the table, I then needed to know what materials I needed to use. For the frame, I decided to make it out of metal, and for the board, it was made out of wood. The wood that I used is timber, and for the metal, I used a 40 by 40, 1 millimeter thick steel rod. So then, we now go to the physical building of our table. We'll start with the frame. So the frame, as I said, was made out of a 40 by 40, 1 millimeter thick steel rod. In short, I first had to cut it using an angle grinder. So what I did for the stands was I cut them into a larger length to ensure that in case I don't make them even, I could be able to cut them down a bit further. After I cut them on the grinder, I wanted to make them even. So what I did was to make the ends even, I put them on an industrial milling machine. So then, after all the parts had been evenly cut, I then took it to a welder, as my welding skills were not good, but in the process I did practice my welding, and yeah, this is the process. So now that our welding and cutting of our frame is done, we then go to the hardest part of building this table, which is the board. The board was 5 meters long, and I needed to cut down at least 130 meters of wood. So I did cut them a bit longer to take into account of the material that had to be removed to even the sides. After that, I had to thin them down from 20 millimeters to at least 18 millimeters. This was important because not all sides of the wood were even. So in order to make all sides even, I decided to thin them out. After thinning out the top and the bottom of the wood, I also had to thin out the sides before I could glue them together. This was a long and tedious process, but it was actually worth it in the end. And the wood actually came out good for my first time in wood making. So then we had to assemble the 3 planks together. So we could directly use wood glue. However, to make sure that they're strong and won't break in any process, we used nails in between, which would hold the wood together. So then after we assemble the wood together, we make sure that everything dried out. So I couldn't continue the process. I had to come back the next day. However, to make sure that all sides are completely attached, we used the clamp, and to prevent warping from happening, which means the wood to bend as it's drying up, we had to get a heavy metal disc and place it at the top of the wood. We then called it a day and came back the next day. So then the wood had dried, but there were still some gaps before we could put the finishing touches. So what we did was we got some sawdust and some wood, and we filled out those gaps with that paste. We then let it dry before we could sand it out and put our varnish. For the sanding process, I used various grades of sanding to make sure I get something a bit smooth. My sanding grit was in the range of 60 and 180. After I sanded out the entire board, I then needed to add some wood varnish. From my understanding and my knowledge, wood varnish helps you preserve the wood and does not prevent any stain from going on the wood. It's also important for preventing things such as termites from eating your wood, and it adds a clear, nice polish to your design. So before I had put varnish on the other side of the wood board, I had to make sure that the varnish on the first side had dried out. This was actually a long process, but it was worth it in the end. After the third coat, things started to look actually pretty good. So after the third and final coat, I sanded it out a bit and then I polished the entire surface. Polishing adds that extra shine and it also helps preserve the varnish. Now we come to the assembly of the table. Now that our board is ready and our frame is well done, all we needed to do was to screw them together. The type of screws that I used was self-tapping screws with a total length of 50 millimeters and a diameter of 5.5 millimeters. I did notice that the frame, because it's metal, was a bit hard to drill directly into the wood. So what I did was I was able to make small holes almost to the same diameter as the screw. That would allow me to drill directly and easily from the frame into the wood. And here's the final design. And voila! In just a few steps, we transformed a pile of materials into a functional and aesthetic pleasing table for my workspace. So whether I'm studying, working, watching videos, or pursuing my engineering projects, this table will be my trusty companion at the moment. I was able to get an extra 5-meter plank of wood, which I used to create a simple shelf. Now we come to the total cost of materials and work hours. The wood board and metal cost $10 each. The sanding paper pack was on a promotion which cost $2.71. The wood glue cost about $1.35. The wood varnish cost $4.65, and the self-tapping screws, which cost around $3.8. Let's not forget the welding rods, which cost $0.38 each. This gave us a total of $33.73. Note that I'm using US currency for my international subscribers out there. Remember that costs are different depending on the country you are watching from, so budget accordingly. And when it came to the total hours of work on this table, the total hours was 35 hours and 28 minutes. I know that some of you may not have these machines that I used, but you don't necessarily need these big machines to build the table. Simple hand tools and hand machines like a hand planer, a hand drill, a hand jigsaw, and a circular saw can get you the same or even better results. So there you have it, first build project of the year. And don't worry, part 2 of my robot arm design is currently on its way. But as I'm still designing it, more videos will be coming to keep you waiting, excited, and to subscribe to my channel. By the way, if you're a newcomer and this is your first video, please hit a like, tell me what you think of the table, and also ask what other projects I can do in the process. I'm really glad that you liked this video and you're able to watch it to the end, and I hope you're able to watch more of my upcoming videos to the end. Happy New Year and have a blessed week.